Okay, ladies and gents, welcome back to Bar Chat Sports. This is our Grand National special. We are delighted to be joined by Mike Dillon, ex-PR Director of Ladbrokes. I said this before, full disclosure, we have had this before. We had a bit of a technical issue. But Mike, Michael Dickinson described you as the most influential person in horse racing that nobody's heard of, respected by everyone across the industry. A nice little recommendation from, I think you said a madman last time.
Yeah, he's delusional. He's delusional, I'm afraid. We're trying to get him medical help as we speak.
Well, listen, go on. Yeah, you carry on. Rodders, you crack on.
Yeah, Mike. So it wouldn't be an exaggeration, would it, to say that you were pivotal in saving the Grand National in the late 70s, early 80s?
I think it would be a slight over-exaggeration. To say I helped in a small way towards it would be more accurate, I think.
As Michael Dickinson would say, you talk bollocks too.
No, I mean, the situation...
We'll get into that in a minute. But, you know, with your Irish roots, you growing up in Manchester, how did you get into racing at the outset that then led to, what, a 40-year-plus career at the top of the game?
Yeah, 46, actually.
Right.
My parents had a pub hotel business in Manchester. And in the early 60s, betting shops were legalised by the government. And a betting shop opened right next door to where the pub was. Now, the only racing on television at the time was BBC on a Saturday. And obviously, the Grand National was a massive part of that. So people used to come in and have a few drinks and go next door to the betting shop. And I sort of got to know the guys who worked in there. And that was my first, you know, my family weren't a family of gamblers or racing people or horse people at all. And my first exposure to it was that Johnny Foy betting shop next door to my parents' business. And that's how I sort of got an interest in it.
And so what did you do? Did you apply to the betting shop to get a job or something?
Well, not to them, no. I obviously, I was only a school kid then. And then when I left school, my parents went to retire in Southern Ireland. So I had to look after myself in Manchester, and I was working as a trainee designer in an advertising agency. And Ladbrokes were applying for trainee betting shop managers, and the money was twice the money I was getting in the advertising agency. It was purely economics that took me to racing.
So how did you get out of the... I was going to say, how did you get out of the betting shop actually to... It's just a progression through Ladbrokes, I assume, was it?
Yeah, it was. I was asked by the chairman, Cyril Steen, who was a very go-ahead guy. And I sort of believed in marketing and advertising and stuff. And I used to spend a lot of time as the manager on the punter side of the shop rather than behind the counter. And he came one day with the area manager, and he said to the cashier staff, "Where's the manager?" And they said, "Oh, he's out there, talking to the punters." And he thought this was a great idea. So he asked me to go and work in London and to go around all the shops in the country and teach them how to market their business. And that's what I did. And in the middle of 75, the National was very precariously balanced. The racecourse had been owned by the Topham family for years and years. And they had no money for capital investment in it. And they sold it to a property development company called the Walton Group of Companies, who were based in Liverpool. And their chairman was a guy called Bill Davis. And he fully intended to build houses on the racecourse. And he didn't get planning permission, but he didn't want to run the Grand National. And there was a grave danger in the middle of 75, that's 50 years ago, that the Grand National would finish. And Cyril Steen said, "This is the biggest betting race of the whole year in the world. We can't let this go, we've just got to do something about it." So he arranged with Bill Davis to manage the racecourse for 7 years. And we set about organising a Grand National meeting. And they were saying, "Well, we don't know anything about running racecourses. We're a betting company. What are we going to do?" And he said, "Oh, well, there's a young fella down the end of the corridor." He said, "Why don't we send him up there?" And of course, none of the directors know. I mean, I was the T-boy really at the time. And he said, "Send him up there." He said, "He's got a northern accent, they'll understand him." And that's how I got the gig. And I was there for 7 years from 1975.
Well, you're very humble, Mike. When we just touched on that a second, I think he was paying a £200,000 annual rent for 7 years, and there was a profit share, I believe, of 1.5 million. Then in you step, and I believe the mission that you were given was to save and rebuild the National and take it from to a commercial and cultural event. And this is what you do. And the bit you just, one of the things Davis did, I understand, is he took the ticket price from £5 to £20 in 1975, which resulted in only 10,000 people turning up that year. You went in, you took it down to 10, although apparently a lot of the scout, in true Liverpool style, they all bribed the guys on the door and got in for a fiver as well. But he took it from, in your 6 years, you took it from 10,000 people to over 64,000 people. And by the early 80s, the National was being broadcast in estimated 500 to 700 million viewers over 120 countries. How did you do that? I mean, it said, my research says using media partnerships, celebrity engagements, and global press to reposition the Grand National into an institution and a much-watched event. How did you do that? What are your memories of that? And what were the challenges along the way? Because on paper, it sounds incredible.
Well, it was a wing and a prayer, really, because I had no knowledge of how to run a race course. I just flew by the seat of my pants. I did what I felt was right. But I was very, very fortunate in that I had I had quite a few allies, but two of my greatest allies were A, Red Rum, and B, his trainer, Ginger McCain. Because at that time, Red Rum had run in 3 Grand Nationals and he'd won 2 and been second once. So he was very much a flavour of the month. And in Ginger McCain, he had a like-minded soul. And at the very beginning, I went to see Ginger and I said, look, we're trying to get this back on its feet. I'm not sure if we can do it, but any help you could give me, would be much appreciated. And he was marvellous. And I think the key element to the success of the thing was the passion of the people of Liverpool, because this was something they were very proud of. And they thought, well, we're not going to see this go up in smoke. We're going to do something about it. And I think without their passion, I don't think the thing would have succeeded. I mean, lots of stuff happened along the way. I went to Liverpool Football Club and told them what we were trying to do. And they said, well, how can we help? So I said, well, it would help me greatly if you could kick your match off at 11 o'clock in the morning. Because, the Nationals about 3:30 and, there'll be 50,000 people in Anfield. And I'd rather a few of them were at Aintree. And it doesn't matter when you play your game, you'll be full. You could play at 3 in the morning and the stadium would be full. And they very kindly said, okay, we'll do that. That was, of course, well before Sky or TNT or any, satellite television companies. And I put on double-decker buses outside Anfield after the match to give people a free ride to Aintree. And I was helped greatly in that a lot of the Liverpool players of that time were very interested in horses. Emily Hughes was the captain and he was England captain. And there were quite a few, Terry McDermott and lots
McDermott. Oh,
yeah. And they were all, they were all up for it. And we just, I just kept banging the drum and getting the stuff in the paper and, just try to get positive stuff out there. I mean, the first time I went there after Mr. Steen signed the agreement with the Walton Group of companies, the place was locked up and I had to find the keys I actually had to go shin over the wall to get in because the whole place was locked up. There was no electricity. He hadn't paid any bills for months and months. And, everything had been cut off. The water was off. The electric was off. And the place was in a shambles. Nothing had happened. You talked there in 75 about the entrance prices. He actually, in that year, he tried to charge the jockeys to get in. He thought it would be a good source of revenue that wasn't being exploited already. So he thought he'd charge the jockeys for coming to work. And funny enough, that didn't work. I don't know why.
Yeah.
So it was really a wing and a prayer. And the goodwill got us through. I mean, we fumbled through on the first year. And Red Rum was second yet again to a horse called Rag Trade. That was the 1976 running. And it's worth remembering that back in those days, it was a mixed meeting. So it was both national hunt racing and flat racing.
Right.
So, you'd have a flat race over a mile and then you'd have a 2-mile handicap chase and then you'd have a flat race over 5 furlongs. you know, and then a 2-mile handicap hurdle. It was a mismatch. And we ran it as a mixed meeting only once, and then we applied to the Jockey Club for it to go all jumping, which it was for the first time in 1977.
Well, that was, Mike, they say life in life timing's everything, isn't it? And there was some hellish, memorable Grand National events, weren't there, during that same? There's Red Rum's third.
Well, then we had 1977 Red Rum was the only horse ever to win it 3 times.
Yeah, and then
so, that was
also you had Aldeniti and Bob Champion, which was
coming from a cancer ward to ride the winner of the Grand National.
Absolutely. And subsequently the subject of a movie, of course.
Yeah, with John Hurt playing Bob Champion. Yeah. So, you know, you couldn't have written in results like that. I mean, if you'd have been a Hollywood scriptwriter, you could, but, you know, this is Liverpool. And
well, then you had Jenny Pitman's win with Corbière, first woman ever.
And it just, you tended to, by luck or good judgment, we rewrote headlines every year that there was a race.
Well,
one year a guy from Scotland won it, and he was the captain of the British Lions. You know, so it just kept happening all around us, really, and we just grabbed it with ball. You know, we grabbed the ball and ran with it. We thought, you know, whatever we can do here, we'll. Going back to, I'm just remembering there, the first year, the health and safety people came in, and you know, we told them what we were trying to do, and they looked around the kitchens and everything, and they said that, because the place was so old, we couldn't serve any hot food at the meeting. So it was all salads and cold food for the first running of the Grand National meeting. And then, you know, we put some money into the fixtures and fittings, and it was hot food the year after. But I've only just remembered it was cold food the first year.
Just what you need in Liverpool.
Yeah, just on a, you know, cold March, end of March or early April day.
Yeah, lovely, lovely.
What other
memories have you got of some of those incredible events, Mike? It's because, you know, you as you said, you couldn't have made it up. Red Rum, Aldeniti, Jenny Pitman, all those kind of things. You know, you must have thought sometime my luck's going to run out in a minute, but it never did.
Yeah, luckily I only had 7 years, so it didn't run out. And then, you know, what happened? The Jockey Club mounted a public appeal to raise funds to buy the race course, and that appeal was headed by Prince Charles, the now King. He actually, one of the things we did, we got him riding round the Grand National fences, and we also got Princess Anne riding round them as well.
Yeah, I remember that now.
We did for Sports Night, yeah. And Richard Pitt rode round with them, and Sir Mark Phillips, we got him at it as well. So it was all just, you know, trying to, you know, get the flag flying and get it in people's psyche that this was a, you know, a thing going forward, not going backwards.
Well, it's a national treasure, wasn't it?
It was.
National.
You know, if you drop it out of the public consciousness, you struggle to get it back.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, you know, it's always excuse me, it's always been blessed with terrestrial television. And you think of around that time, you know, there were on a Friday night on BBC, you used to have the Horse of the Year show. You'd have all show jumping from Olympia, and it was a staple diet of British sport. And because it's not on terrestrial television anymore, nobody hears a thing about it. You know, it's just an industry that's completely gone, a sport that's just disappeared from everybody's psyche.
Well, show jumping, yeah.
It used to be on a Friday night. You'd come home 7 o'clock. You'd be the Horse of the Year show. You know, with Raymond Brooks Ward.
Yes.
What was it called? What was it called when they used to jump that, like that massive? Yeah, Puissance. That was it.
Yeah.
I mean, 100 millions watched that, didn't they?
Oh,
I think.
Loads. But, we just kept going, and we were mindful that we were there for a limited time. And what we wanted to do, we wanted to pass the ball, you know, to the incumbent in a better shape than we got it. And I think, you know, with those figures you mentioned there, that, you know, I think we succeeded in that. And we gave them a footing to move it forward. So there was capital investment needed. And obviously, we weren't going to put massive capital investment in because we were only tenants. And then the Jockey Club bought it, and it's been a Jockey Club course ever since. And you look at it now, I mean, Saturday it'll be a full house. And, you know, there's some fantastic new spectator points there all around the course, and it's a go-to place now. The famous got ladies' day there on Friday, which every single girl in Liverpool will dress up in a finery and they'll all be there. And there's a fabulous card there tomorrow. So it's a 3-day meeting now to rival Cheltenham.
Can I ask you a quick question, Mike? I saw a lot in the press after Cheltenham. We were there; it was very busy, but supposedly down 25%. The ticket price, I think we paid like 130 quid, and a lot of people are saying that was it, and it wasn't cheap on the course. In contrast, we're going to the National Friday and Saturday. The tickets are like 30 quid. And I appreciate one's it's a very different, I know there's different clientele, or it wouldn't stomach those kind of money. What do you think the answer is for Cheltenham? I mean, is it just because people don't have the money, but or do you think that's a trend that's going to carry on? I don't know what they're saying has caused it, whether it's the recession or how to get around it. What have you got a take on that at all?
Well, I think it's market forces, really. I mean, that they're fighting for the leisure pound in the way that other people are. I mean, you look, a season ticket at Arsenal is, I know friends who've got season tickets there and they're forever moaning about the price of a season ticket. And, my brother's got season tickets at Manchester United and they're going up again. The team are getting worse and the prices are going up. So there's no one answer to your question. But it's interesting in terms of Cheltenham. Cheltenham went from 3 days to 3 days festival to a 4-day festival. And if you add in the costs of hotels and different things, people just can't afford it or they don't want to pay it. So lots of people I know now just go for 2 days. They'll either go Tuesday, Wednesday or Thursday, Friday and maybe stay one night. But back in the day, people used to go on Monday night and race Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday and come home on Friday. It was a 3-day meeting, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And people's priorities change and there are different things. But it's interesting in terms of hospitality. At these big race courses, it's always the most expensive areas that sell out first. Yeah. So if you look to the panoramic suite at Cheltenham, that'll be sold out. The Roo restaurant at Cheltenham, 600 people sold out. The same will be at Aintree. All the private boxes will be taken. Now the smaller enclosures, people don't want to pay it because they feel that the facilities are not good enough, and people are forever trading up, and they'll take a more expensive option if they can, because they're going to make sure, and they, one of the big talks at Cheltenham was how much a pint of Guinness was, as though that was the panacea for everything. And if you go into a pub in central London or you go into the
I can't even remember how much was a pint. I can't even remember. We obviously had a good day. How much was it? Right,
£7.80.
I think, Mark,
they're charged by Cheltenham. The Guinness Village is charged. If you go to Twickenham to watch England play in Ireland, I bet it's £7.80 for a pint there, and there's a queue from from there into Euston Station. So,
well, they got through 5,600 barrels of Guinness at was that 88 pints a barrel? What is that? 500,000 pints? I don't know. It's more than that, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's a lot of.
But it's a go-to place for people. You see, it's a meeting place, and lads going into half a dozen lads will meet you at the Guinness Village. Yeah, and I've got lots of owners and trainers who start off there the day with having a pint.
And out of interest, I know that you're not necessarily there on a daily basis, but are people betting as much on the National as they were? Reportedly massive figures, isn't it? But are they still betting as much as they were 10 years ago, 20 years ago?
I would say yes, because there are more avenues now to have a bet. More people betting online than there were 20 years ago. But it's still the one race of the year that everybody had to bet on. There'll be sweepstakes in all the offices and all the homes. The one thing that won't be great this year is that I would think that the ITV viewing figure will be under threat because of the weather. So an ITV viewing figure succeeds when it's raining and cold and everybody says, oh, we'll stay in the house for the day and watch the Grand National. But if it's 20 degrees and a lovely day, everybody would be out in the garden and out walking and whatever. And, I think the figure might suffer because of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's still the one race of the year. The second busiest is the Gold Cup at Cheltenham, but the Grand National would be 5 times the turnover of the Gold Cup at Cheltenham.
Wow.
Mike, I've got a question on the betting, but before I do, you've mentioned something that I just wanted to pick up on. As a Barrow boy, born and bred, obviously Emlyn Hughes was a huge figure in the town, and as a Liverpool fan as well, a very decorated player. He's probably Barrow's biggest ever export, having captained England and Liverpool during a very successful time. But it's great to hear that he played a part in the national as well. I wasn't aware of that. So much so the town does have a statue to him.
Oh yeah, he absolutely massive. I mean, we had a race in his honour during his testimonial year.
Right.
One of the races which wasn't on television, but was at the end of the day, was the Emlyn Hughes handicap hurdle. And that happened. Brilliant. We actually got him on red rum down at Beecher's Brook. He sat on red rum, and that's how good. You know, you forget about red rum. Red rum he used to open betting shops every week of the year.
Yeah.
He switched on the Blackpool Illuminations. He actually went down to London and appeared on the Sports Personality of the Year. And the horse box pulled up outside, and Billy Beardwood, who was his lad, walked him through the reception at BBC, up in a lift, got into a lift, and went up to where the programme was being screened, and he walked across the stage. That's what sort of a horse Red Rum was. Brilliant. So when we had that sort of profile for the national, we were blessed. You know, if we hadn't succeeded, it would have been absolutely our fault. Because with that, in those days, Sports Personality of the Year, 20 million people used to watch it.
Yeah.
Have him walking across the stage.
Well, you had to have Ginger on board with that, didn't you? Because there are some trainers who wouldn't have even.
They were the 2 most important people in the whole process. A, Red Rum, and B, that Red Rum was trained by somebody like Ginger, who would let us have any access I ever asked for. He never turned me down once. Not once.
No, is it right? Is it right? He used to train when I can't remember what the injury was that Red Rum. He used to train him on the beach down near Liverpool, wasn't it? Or Southport, somewhere like that.
100%. He was a used car salesman and a taxi driver. That was his day job, and he trained horses, as an aside. And then he gave up the cars, but his stable was always in a used car plot. And it was right next to a railway line, so the horses would have to walk across the railway line to get to the beach. Yeah, and the horse had bad feet, but galloping in the sea with the salt water really helped the injury.
And I guess the other thing that's happened, and it's perhaps been more prominent in recent years, that there was the contention years ago about the size of the fences and the horse injuries that were incurred. Many changes made to the course over the years to make it safer for both jockeys and horses. In more recent years, protests as well at the course around animal rights and the perceived safety of the circuit. Do you think that the race in its current state is safe? It's not likely to suffer threats of external pressure to either change further or to abandon it?
I sincerely hope not, because it's very much part of British society, and I think the welfare issues were well documented. I think they've been very well addressed by the Jockey Club. There's a reduction in the amount of runners that you can have. In my day, it was 40, it's now 34. But, before modern times, you used to get, 60 odd horses line up in the national. So it's down to 34 now. There's been lots of amendments to the fences. They used to have a drop at the far side, and they've all been levelled off. They're far easier to jump now than I can ever remember in 50 years. And I think that they've done everything that they possibly can. And I think, now's the time to stop and let it go as it is now. Because if you carry on further, you lose the whole essence of the race.
Agreed.
And I think they've been very sympathetic to people's concerns, and they've acted on them, and acted in my humble opinion in a very responsible way.
Yeah.
Well, there are now. You talk about reduced field. There's also pre-race veterinary checks. There's a lot that's gone on, hasn't it? And this won't be a very popular argument, but I think to your point is that the the charm of the National is, I mean, there's not been many 100-to-1 winners. I think there was it not
there
in
was
2009?
Yeah.
For an even.
Well, there was one a couple years ago.
Oh, 2009 was Monmouth, yeah. Yeah. But do you know what I mean? It's like the horse coming in that's a rank outsider. It's not like betting on the, even the Cheltenham Gold Cup, well, although this year was a turn up. But it's not like where they normally always win. There's always a chance, isn't there? There's always a horse that
I think in the last 5 years, 3 occasions the race has been won by the favourite. So that would confirm your view, I think. I mean, I think as you sanitise, the situation in terms of the fences and the reduced, by definition, it's going to get easier, and it lends itself now to a more classy horse than it used to do. If you look through there's so many very, very good horses in this race. I mean, I was looking through the runners this morning, and out of the 34, if one of 20 of them won, I wouldn't be surprised at all. So it still retained the competitive nature, albeit in a different type of way.
We were talking this morning, Mike, with about Brave Man's Game.
Yes.
What King George winner?
I know. Well, there's
would never have run in the Grand National in the past, would it?
No, and you've now got a thing that's only happened in the last few years, which is the cross country race at Cheltenham. And there was a horse called Stumptown was very, very good at Cheltenham when he won there. He's turning up in the National. I Am Maximus that won the race last year, and he didn't jump particularly well. In fact, I can't ever remember seeing a horse win a Grand National so easily, having jumped so badly. And but he's back again. There's another horse called Intense Raffles, which has got a very good chance. He won an Irish Grand National. So there's loads of high-class horses in there, and it'll be a very, very good renewal on Saturday. And whoever wins it will have absolutely deserved to win it.
I was going to ask you a little bit later on, but if you had to have a bet each way or on the nose, I don't know how you do it, who would you be betting on Saturday?
It's interesting. Racing is very blessed to have a guy called JP McManus as an owner, and he's probably the best benefactor National Hunt Racing has ever had in its history, in terms of the amount of horses he has in training, in the way he supports lots of trainers in England and Ireland and Scotland and Wales.
And little trainers, Mike, aren't they? They're not,
so many of them. And he's won them 4 times now. And don't forget, AP McCoy had 20 goals before he won it, and he won it for JP McManus. And JP's got 5 runners in the race this year. And there's a horse I've been watching of his all season called Iroko.
Oh, yeah.
And I think he'll go very, very close in the race. As I say, he's got last year's winner. And he could, course form is very, very important. So he could easily, light the place up again. But Iroko is a horse I think that will run really, really well in the race.
What sort of price is he, Mike? Do you know?
I think it's about 10 to 1, 10, 12 to 1, something like that.
Yeah.
Maximus is 10 to 1, isn't it? Maximus.
Yeah.
So, Mike, I can't think of the Grand National without thinking about the voice of the late great Peter O'Sullivan.
Yeah.
I know you're a trustee of his trust.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about your relationship with him and also what the trust does?
He, I got to know him through the Grand National. He used to come up early to Liverpool and walk around the course and everything, so he knew, what was what. And of course, the National, one commentator cannot commentate on the Grand National because it's 4.5 miles and 30 fences.
There's a tremendous cheer from the crowd as Desert Orchid is going to win it. Desert Orchid has won the Gold Cup.
And they go away from the stand and out into the country, and you just physically can't see the horses. They're that far away. So he would hand over to somebody. He'd do the starts, and they would cross the Melling Road and jump the fences, and come into Beecher's Brook, which is getting towards the furthest point from the grandstand. He would hand over, and back in the day, he used to hand over to the Irish commentator Michael O'Hare, and he'd take them past what became the Foynaven fence and the Canal Turn, and and then swing for home, and then they'd go to somebody else, and that somebody else, as they came back onto the race course, would hand over to Peter. So I got to know him, through being at Aintree, and he used to come up more at the track and look for his position, and and just I was going racing a lot, and the BBC did a lot of covering of racing in those days. So we became sort of very close pals. And when he set up his charitable trust, after he finished commentating, he did 50 Grand Nationals, by the way. He commentated on 50 Grand Nationals.
Wow.
And there's actually a marble bust to him just by the paddock there, which he was very disparaging about. He didn't like it very much because he said he didn't think it looked like him. It looked like Arthur Askey, who the boys won't know, but was a very old-fashioned comedian, London comedian from years ago. But he absolutely loved the game, and he loved animals. And his mantra was, if we can't be nice to animals, we can't be nice to fellow humans. He felt it was much more important to have a love of animals and livestock and be kind to them in the same way you would to people. And that's why he set up the charitable trust to help, a myriad of organisations who were badly in need of funds. And we kept it going after Sir Peter died. We were in a bit of a dilemma as to whether it was appropriate to keep it going once he passed away. And we were at a World Horse Welfare Conference, which Princess Anne is the chairman. And she asked me how the trust was going. And I told her, and I said, but we're in the horns of a dilemma, ma'am. We're thinking, maybe it's time with Peter sadly having gone that we should. She said, do not even think about it. Keep that man's memory for perpetuity. You crack on and keep doing it. So we took her advice, and we're still going strong.
But Peter, you've in Peter's name, you've given a lot of money to charities, haven't you?
16 million, yeah.
16 million pounds.
16 million, yeah. So we're still going strong.
How long ago was that set up, Mike?
We've had 26 of them, so I'll let you do the maths.
Wow.
So it's 26th year, yeah.
1999.
Yeah, is that when it was? Yeah.
Incredible.
But it's and everybody loves supporting it, so it's great. And the man's name is synonymous with class and racing and everything good in the world. So
I bet he was a top man. I met him a couple of times.
He's wonderful.
Absolute gentleman.
He was a classic case of manners maketh the man.
Yeah,
he just absolutely know. And it wasn't a surprise that the Queen knighted him.
No.
So that speaks volumes. She loved him. Whenever I'd be with him at Royal Ascot, Her Majesty's racing manager would always come over to Sir Peter and said, Her Majesty wants to see you. And he'd chat to her in the paddock. He'd go and have tea with her in the royal box. They were great mates. Great mates.
No, it was top.
He is. I think I said last time we spoke. In the world of Murray Walker, that voice is synonymous with the sport, isn't it?
The word iconic is overused, but he was an icon without any question.
He was.
But he was just a bloody good commentator. I mean, he got you. There are so many examples of him, and commentating towards the end, and he just draw you into it.
He from his third national.
Yeah.
So there you go. He did Dawn Run's Gold Cup. All the great racing finishes that are all his.
Commented on Shergard, didn't he?
He didn't know because I think it was Channel 4 then, and it was on BBC. Bromley did it for the radio.
All right. Okay. Yeah. Well. Yeah. Top man. And all credit to you, and you've got a really good sort of set of guys who work with you on it, and all credit to you. 16 million pounds.
Yeah. One of the guys I started who started after a couple of years at Aintree at Ladbrokes, a guy called Nigel Payne, who was mad keen on racing, who actually went on to own a Grand National winner, if you don't mind.
You did, yeah.
Yeah. So.
That's his, isn't that? Did that when you were saying the other day? It's actually his email address, isn't it? Is it Nigel at Earth Summit or something like that?
Absolutely, yeah. And
Nigel at EarthSummit.com.
He's a fellow trustee with me.
Yeah.
Well,
Right,
he
another
was
gentleman.
he was the one that described you as the son that Sir Peter never had.
Yeah, well, that would flatter me, I tell you. But we were great friends, and we had some wonderful, wonderful times together. He was how could you not love him? Jeez, he was wonderful.
I was going to ask you one last thing that it just occurred to me. We were watching, Dad and I, we were watching a couple of reruns the other day, and we were watching the S&S, the one that never was,
Yes.
and the chaos that was at the start. And I forgot that they'd restarted that race 2 or 3 times before they or half of them finally went off.
That's right.
And we were both saying, where was anyone? One of the jockeys, I think, said that when the tape goes up, that the flag, the start of the flag, is actually behind you. So when some of them went away, they never actually saw that go on. What have they done now?
Well,
do you know how they've changed that?
There is another flag further on.
Yeah.
There's usually 2 guys in front of the first fence waving their flags.
Well, that's when it's a false start, yeah. But because you've got the Melling Road to cross before you get to the first.
Yeah.
So the flag was actually there before, but they've amended and hopefully it doesn't happen anymore. But you saw at Cheltenham there were a plethora of false starts there.
Yeah.
When you get a guy who's 10 stone trying to control a half a 100-weight animal, it's not an easy piece of maths, And they'll do what they want to do rather than what you want them to do. And there are 34 of them all wound up and ready to run for their life, and it's not a surprise that they want to get on with it.
Yeah.
Well, it was quite interesting to pull your point when you talked about protesters earlier, that when they came back round and they finished the race, that the jockeys said that whilst there were people flagging them, telling them to stop, they couldn't hear, and they were chatting that they just thought it was protesters telling them to stop the race.
Yeah, well, I remember that very, very well because, as you said, chaos ensued. And the national that year was presented by Des Lynham, and I knew Des, being very actively involved with BBC, and he asked me to go on the programme on Grandstand, and I thought, well, there's only one thing people want to hear from me: what's going to happen to the money they bet on the race?
Of course,
that's only one question they're going to have, and I went on with Des and. Everybody can rest assured that any penny they put on the Grand National, they will get it back. And I felt that was, the right message to send out at that time, because people sitting at home, the once a year punters, they've no understanding of the workings of racing, but they'll understand that they put a £5 on, and what's going to happen to it now there's no race.
But what about the people that actually backed S&S? They would also equally be livid because it came in at a long price as well, didn't it?
Well, it was a void race, wasn't it? So there's not a lot you can do, really.
But it was funny in the moment.
There were. Don't forget, an awful lot of horses pulled up.
Yeah.
I think the 4 finished. So I think deep down, I think they knew.
Yeah.
That it was void. I think they knew.
Yeah. But there was that confusion just after the race, because the ones that stopped before the first, there was about 15 minutes where they're saying, well, we'll restart the race. And then that obviously became untenable very quickly.
Well, how could it when some people have gone 4.5 miles? You can't tell them to do it again.
Yeah,
you would have horse welfare on your back if that had happened.
Yeah. Fascinating thing. Plenty of drama along the way.
Scare.
Yeah, I was there that year actually. Yeah.
Oh, the bomb scare, yeah.
Yeah, when it was run on the Monday.
I tell you a funny story there. They evacuated us off the circuit. I'm sure you would have done the same. And they took us all off the back and into a housing estate. And there was a guy there who must have thought it was Christmas, because everyone exited to his corner shop, where he literally got emptied of beer and wine. And everyone was just stood in the street in true English fashion. No one seemed that particularly bothered, and got shit-faced outside this guy's place. So he must have made an arm and a leg.
All the jockeys went into housewives and sat there having tea and watching the telly in the breeches. And then that was that, and then it was rerun on the Monday, and Princess Anne came, and John Major, I think, was the Prime Minister at the time, and he came up just to tell the IRA that they weren't going to win.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
I mean, it's a race, you know, wherever you want to look. You know, you mentioned Foynehaven early on when everybody fell and got brought down at the smallest fence on the race course, which is now called the Foynehaven fence.
Mm.
And that was, you know, 100 to 1. And there's been all sorts of dramas. You know, Devon Lock falling in the 50s, owned by the Queen Mother, who was there on the track, and it jumped all the fences and sprawled when it saw shadow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's just symptomatic with drama, the race, and that's the beauty of it.
And that's why you had to say that, which you did. So well done, mate.
I just want to ask you one last question, Mike. Was slightly off piece. When we last spoke to you, and we spoke to John Joe, and we spoke to nobody we spoke to put anything past. And I asked you because he's running on Friday. Anyone past Constitution Hill, and what a drama that we saw there. What unbelievable, and Deschamps as well.
Is it tomorrow?
It's Friday, isn't it? Oh, is it tomorrow? No, it's tomorrow. You're right. Yeah, you're right. It's 3:30 tomorrow.
Yeah, and John Bond's running on Friday.
Yeah, John Bond on Friday.
But I mean, it was just that sort of Cheltenham. I had lunch with Fred Doan, who owns the big bookmakers Betfred, and he said in all the years he's been in the business, it was the best Cheltenham the company had ever had.
Really?
Well, I'm not surprised. Galopin Sean got beat. You know
everything. Well, there's some amazing stats from it, really, because obviously Willie Mullins was the champion trainer, and he trained 10 winners, which was more than were trained in the whole of the UK. There was only 8 trained in the UK, and he had 10. And among those 10, he didn't win one of the championship races. Not one of them, which is extraordinary, really.
Yeah.
So, it'd be fascinating to have a word with him at Aintree and see if he was disappointed with his Cheltenham week or pleased with it. I think he's probably mixed emotions.
10 winners, I'd imagine he'd be quite satisfied.
Well, having said that, he had the horse going for the third Gold Cup. He had a horse 15 lengths clear in the champion hurdle at the last and fell. He had all sorts. He had a horse that was odds on for the Queen Mother and jumped terribly. It was bizarre, really. I mean, to think he would have gone away on the Friday night without winning one of the championship races was unthinkable. But it happened.
Well, Lossiemouth didn't run in the champion hurdle, but probably because of Constitutional Hill. Of course, they face each other on tomorrow. Thursday. You can't see anything past. You did not put an element of doubt in your mind. You still can't see anything past Constitutional Hill tomorrow.
Well, I mean, don't forget when she ran in her trial at the Dublin Racing Festival at Leopardstown, she fell.
Yes, she did.
Yeah. Those obstacles are there to be jumped, and if you take liberties with them, that's what Constitution Hill did. And if you remember when he had his prep run in January, he nearly fell at the last. He sprawled after the last.
It was a similar mistake as well, Mike. It looked like he took an extra stride.
Well, he just snapped at them. He's going too easily and too quick, and he pays no regard to them. He thinks he can just kick them out the way or not bother with them. But
But do you think that's horse or jockey?
I think it's that he comes too easy to the horse. I think that's the problem, and I think the jockey has to obviously bear that in mind. But I mean, he couldn't have expected the horse to do what he did at Cheltenham. Couldn't have expected that at all. I mean, I know they've got to be ready for all eventualities, but cry for the horse just to step at the hurdle like that and come crashing down. And, I mean, to have a champion hurdle where 2 previous champions both fell is remarkable, really. Stateman had won it last year and he fell with the race at his mercy. And obviously Constitution Hill had won it before and he fell. So, it was
bizarre.
Yeah,
it was bizarre.
But it was that sort of week, and that's what makes the racing game so great.
Yeah,
the glorious uncertainty.
Brilliant. Mike, thanks so much for joining us again. We'll get this one up without any hiccups, hopefully, and hopefully we can catch up with you soon. You going to Aintree at all, or not?
Yes, I'm actually on. I'll blow my own trumpet for a second. I'm being inducted to the Aintree Hall of Fame on Saturday morning.
Oh, well done, mate. Well deserved.
There's an induction process at 11:30, so I'm there on Saturday to avail of that.
Well done.
That's
well,
on
we
Saturday.
might. we might catch up with you then. We're there Friday, Saturday, so it'll be lovely to see you.
Okay,
Share a
well,
Guinness.
I will be put a plaque on the wall, Mark. That's all I'll be.
All right, mate.
Okay.
I remember that at your funeral, mate. I was
Plaque on the wall. That's all he
plaque
is.
on the wall.
That's it. That's the reality. You've got to hold your hands up. That's what it comes down to.
Got to go for it, haven't you? Take care, mate. Thanks.
All right.
Thanks so
Thanks,
much
guys.
for coming on.
Cheers,
We
Mike.
really-
No bother. No bother.
Cheers,
Thanks.
guys.
Cheers.